Good evening, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to another episode of Critique Corner with me, Daniel Parker.
And me, DB Fastbinder.
And yeah, we are back from a short little uh, hiatus, but we're ready to go.
A K-pop concert-induced hiatus.
Yes, and hey, Ninja, good to see you.
Hey, Ninja.
If you are returning like Ninja, welcome back. If you're new, what we usually do is we do some reviews, usually doing something old, and then or something new or newish, something classic, and then we'll usually have some things that we've been consuming on our own. But before we get into all of that, we'd like to talk about the box office.
Yeah, so I was looking at the per theater average here for Bad Boys Ride or Die, and it's like numbers higher than 5,000 exist because this
Yeah,
has been a rough summer for everybody.
yeah,
So Bad Boys Ride or Die, which I believe is the fourth movie in the franchise,
yes, yeah.
came in at 56 million. Which, since it isn't a movie with a whole bunch of CGI apes or Godzilla punching King Kong or
Yeah.
Dunes,
Yeah.
it has a budget of 100 million, so actually has a really good shot of making its money back.
Yes.
So
Yeah. I guess people weren't that upset with Will Smith.
I guess not.
Yeah.
Uh, also, it shows that actually Sony has had the top two last weekend because
Yeah.
Garfield in its third weekend. For a morbidly obese cat, he sure can leg it out.
Yes.
So this is, there's I feel like there's two Sonys. There's the Sony that just makes movies and they're still in the movie business and aren't trying to build franchises. And then there's the pants on head side that keeps making Morbius and Craven and Madam Web.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that the intelligent movie side of the business is unhappy with that other half.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they just need to stop making Spider-Man spin-offs, and they'll be good.
Right. Just make more movies with actual Spider-Man in them.
Yeah.
I don't think people would complain if you did an animated movie starring Tom Holland
No.
or Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield for that matter. Like when No Way Home came out, there was a lot of hype about, oh, give Andrew Garfield a third Spider-Man movie. They weren't
Yeah.
going to do that. A Spider-Man movie costs, so much to make that the second movie didn't actually make its money back.
Right. Yeah. Well, they were talking about a fourth Tobey Maguire movie.
That I could see actually doing well because my take on what the Andrew Garfield movies were is everybody was rooting against them the whole time
Yeah.
because it's like it was too fast and it was just another reboot so that Sony didn't lose the Spider-Man license
Right. Yeah.
because it's in the contract that if they didn't make a movie in X period of time or every so often they would forfeit the rights back to, in this case, Disney.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the other thing too with Amazing Spider-Man 2, do you know who one of the writers was on that movie?
Oh, it was what's his nuts who ruined Star Trek, but I can't think of his name right now.
Alex Kurtzman. Yeah.
Alex Kurtzman.
Yeah.
One of the, I remember there when his MonsterVerse movie came out.
Yes.
I saw a review that said, "Can we put a moratorium on how many franchises one man can ruin?"
Yeah. Yeah, Ninja says yeah, they should just make a Spider-Man Venom movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that Venom was a bad is ultimately bad that Venom did well without Spider-Man along because it taught Sony, oh, well, people will watch a Spider-Man adjacent movie without any reference to Spider-Man in it. That'll be fine. Ignoring the fact that Venom is like the one Spider-Man character you could do that with.
Right. Yeah.
Ninja says, "I'm one of the few Amazing Spider-Man fanboys."
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, fair enough. It's just that the general zeitgeist I noticed was that people rooting against it.
Yeah.
All right, so moving down the list, we've got If, which, I mean, if we go back to the weekend we skipped,
Still
all
three.
we took Furiosa in its second weekend,
Ooh.
and it didn't drop very much. Like, it's probably still going to be unprofitable just because it costs so darn much to make.
Yeah.
Seems like it kind of seems like it's this summer's version of Elemental, where you have families going, well, you know, either have the rude cat voiced by Chris Pratt, or we have If.
Yeah. And Inside Out 2 is coming out pretty soon, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it might even be this weekend.
Yeah.
I'm I'm going to be very curious how that one does because, so if I just go by meme culture, I never see anybody talk about Inside Out.
No. You,
It was
you, you might occasionally see the gif of the guy getting angry and the flames coming out of his head, but other than that, yeah, not really.
right where you see lots of references to Wall-E, The Incredibles, Monsters Inc. But and maybe I'm just hanging out with the wrong people. I never bothered to see Inside Out, but that's because that was the point where, how to put it, I had felt like I had seen enough Inside Out movie, or excuse me, enough Pixar movies.
Yeah, I can see that because it didn't really feel like a Pixar movie, or at least not a traditional one. It didn't feel like like Wall-E or Incredibles or even did Ratatouille come out before Inside Out? I think it did.
Yes, yes, it did.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Which Ratatouille was all right. And Ninja says he saw the Inside Out 2 clip from the Summer Games Fest. It was bad. Oh,
I mean, we were talking before the show about Star Wars Theory saying that Episode 3 of The Acolyte was just Leslie Headland's therapy session, and it occurs to me that with a bunch of modern writers dealing with some teenage girl's headspace, how can it be anything but cringe?
yeah. And he says the first Inside Out movie was popular, then the rest of the Pixar movies came out and overshadowed. Like, oh, okay, yeah,
Right? It seems like it's kind of been forgotten. I remember it being well received at the time,
yeah,
but this was back when, things like The Good Dinosaur, which were just kind of mediocre, were seen as this is horrible. This is an amazing slip in quality. What the heck is going on here?
yeah, yeah.
Right, moving down the top 10 here, we got The Watchers in fourth place, which I think that's the M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong Daughter movie. And in fact,
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, it is. Yeah,
Reviews I
yeah.
saw were not terribly up on it.
Oh boy, yeah. If you remember when God, who was it? Either Time or Newsweek declared that M. Night Shyamalan was the next Steven Spielberg.
I mean, they probably had about as many successful movies in the 21st century, but
Yeah.
then we got Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes holding it in at number 5. Although we are now well under $10 million here for the rest of the top 10, which is indicative of the summer.
Yes. Yeah.
Then at number 6, falling from second place, is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. And boy, I'm almost glad that we took last week off because there was so much wailing and gnashing of teeth about that movie. Did
Yeah.
people stay away because they were afraid of girl bosses? Did they wait too long to make the movie? It,
Mm.
you're an it, you're an istinophobe. You're dumb for not going to see this movie. Da, 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 da. The trailers just didn't make it look that good. I'm sorry.
No, they didn't. Yeah, and I only kind of, I mean, I kind of liked Fury Road. I didn't love it, and I didn't love it enough that I wanted to see a prequel movie about Charlize Theron's character.
Right. That's the kind of thing that honestly you put on HBO Max as an animated series as a way to pad out the franchise. And you get Charlize Theron to voice the characters. So there's continuity.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, quite enough ink has been skilled. Quite enough ink has been spilled over that particular movie.
Yes. Yeah. Don't need to get into that.
No. The Fall Guys at number 7 still kind of holding in there, though. Another one where they spent too much money on it for the premise.
Yeah.
It's already available digitally, so if you're spending $20 on a movie ticket and popcorn versus staying at home, what's the better choice?
Exactly. Yeah. 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 I've heard the same thing too, Ninja. Yeah. I think Changus really liked Furiosa.
The other thing I heard is that so Cinema Score, the way it works is we don't know who they are, what their sample size is,
Hmm.
but they just poll people who come out of select theaters and ask them how they liked the movie. And anything less than like an A minus on their scorecard is extremely bad. And,
Yeah.
and as I recall, with general audiences, Furiosa got itself a B.
Uh, mm,
So like it seems like it appeals to cinephiles, but not necessarily to the masses.
yeah.
Which it's unfortunate. Kind of, I'm not rooting against the movie at all. Just calling it like it is. Same
Indeed.
same thing with the Fall Guy.
Yeah.
Fall Guy, I'm probably going to watch it at some point, either at home or on streaming, but it just didn't sound like it was worth getting out of my seat and going to the theater for.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here.
Then rounding out the top 10, we got two surprise items here, a re-release of The Fellowship of the Ring and The Two Towers,
Yeah.
which they didn't do huge numbers, but on the other hand, for movies that long, you're not going to get that many showings.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, they're over 20 years old, so it's unless you get like people who want to experience seeing them in the theater again, or you get like younger people who didn't see it in the theater when they first came out, because I think I can't remember, I want to say it was Tom at Midnight's Edge was talking about going to see The Dark Knight in theaters again, and seeing all the young people who were there, like teenagers, they were just amazed by seeing it in the theater, because they were either hadn't been born yet or they were too young to
Right.
see it in the theater. So it's the same thing with these movies. It's like, you know anyone under the age of 20 didn't see any of these movies in the theater. Yeah.
Right. So it makes sense to periodically re-release them.
Yeah.
And now I'm imagining, so I'm noticing that they both didn't have, they have almost the same number of screens, only 20 off. And
Yeah.
so the weirdo in me is almost wondering, did they show these back to back? That would be that would be hilarious. Like, okay, we're here at the iPick Theater or the whatever that other one where it's like a bar, Cinebar. That's it.
So, yeah.
Uh, okay, so you pay us for 1.5 tickets. You get 7 hours of entertainment with an hour long intermission in between, 4 drink minimum. That's how we're going to pay for this.
Yes. And you better take an Uber home.
Then we got The Strangers Chapter 1, which sounded like it was a horror prequel that nobody really asked for.
Hmm.
When it sounded like the whole premise that made the horror series fun was the mystery around them. So good job, numbnuts.
Yeah.
And then a random number 11 here, Haikyuu the Dumpster Battle, which is an anime about volleyball players. And I don't have anything to say about it because I haven't seen the series, but it amuses me that name just amuses me, the Dumpster Battle.
Yeah. Wonder if it's the same anime that I remember watching like a couple of, but no, it's a different one. Okay. I remember watching another volleyball anime, but it was more fan servicey than
Okay.
this one here. I can't remember the name of it.
I know that I saw a trailer for it somewhere, and I remember thinking at the time, I have no idea what this is because I've never seen this show, but it certainly looks like it's made for fans of the show.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's see if there's any other surprises in here,
Mm,
just to see if they
not
any
really.
any other funny. Oh, they did a small re-release of Spider-Man: No Way Home, the more fun stuff version, in 466
460.
theaters with $4,000 of income. Oof,
Ugh.
that was a lot of
Eh.
that was a lot of waste.
That's like when they released Deadpool, a PG-13 version of Deadpool 2. Like, why are you doing that?
I want to say that I want to say that Ryan Reynolds specifically went along with that version because he wanted to prove to Disney it was unviable, or
Oh,
Disney wanted to see if it was viable.
okay.
And I think the answer they got was no, it has to be R-rated. Shut up.
Yeah.
Speaking of R-rated, I think that's a good time to move on to our first review of the day.
Yes.
The new-ish South Park episode, or newish South Park special for Paramount Plus, The End of Obesity.
Yes. So the South Park guys are getting on the Ozepic train. Um, the special starts off where Cartman's at the doctor, and of course his doctor's telling him he needs to lose weight, but of
Right,
course
you're
Cartman's just
pre-diabetic, high cholesterol.
right, yeah, and so then his doctor tells him, well, there is this drug called Ozepic, but and this is true in real life. Ozepic, they've found out it can be used as a weight loss drug, but um, uh, the Ozepic, what now? Ozepic it's used to treat diabetes, but they found out that it can be also used for weight loss. But the problem is insurance companies won't pay for it if it's being used for weight loss. They'll only do it if it's being used to treat diabetes.
Right, and I think that the reason is that I don't know if it's actually been fully studied for weight loss or if it's been studied enough that it's kind of like they figured out for a while that small amounts of aspirin would help prevent blood clots and heart attacks and whatnot. But it
Right.
took many years to actually make it so that they could say, we prescribe it for that because you have to do testing.
Right. Yeah.
But also, I think it's because there's a limited supply of the stuff, which they actually cover in this episode.
Yeah.
And, people who need it for diabetes are kind of first priority.
Yeah. Because diabetes is a life threatening illness.
Right. I mean, you could be like on South Park, you could be like that one guy who has freckles and a lisp but with diabetes. I think his name
Yes. Yeah.
is his name is escaping me, but
Oh
because
God.
he's a
Yeah.
very minor character. Yeah. So
Yeah.
okay, so our setup there, Cartman needs to get on the O.
Yes. And really, the only reason he wants to get on it is so that he can be skinny and insult people, and they can't insult him back.
Right. You'll have nothing else to make fun of.
Right. And so, but of course, since he can't get on the drug because he's, did the South Guard guys make it about
No, no,
communism? No, no.
it's going somewhere different.
Yeah, yeah. So Cartman's really sad because he can't get Ozepic, and then Kyle offers to help him out and to try to get his insurance company to pay
Right. It's
for
just
it, but
it's,
it's just this never ending,
right. Yeah, navigating the American healthcare system, and it turns into this MC Escher painting at one point.
yeah.
But meanwhile, the B plot,
Mhm.
as it always seems to be Randy who gets the B plots.
Yeah, I think Trey Parker has something to do with that.
Right. So one morning, the, there's Randy, and his daughter is going off to school wearing a crop top, And he says, "No, Shelley, you can't wear that to school." Well, why not?
Yeah.
Well, uh, because Shelley, if you dress like that, you'll end up dealing with people who do drugs, and it always ends badly.
Yeah.
Which might be some of the most ingenious foreshadowing they've ever done, really.
Oh yeah.
Because uh, Randy decides he's going to embarrass Shelley by picking her up from school wearing his own crop top. And earlier they set up that a bunch of the moms were on Ozempic and they now had fully sculpted invisible abs because of it. And so they were walking around all the time with their bellies out.
Yeah.
And so they say, "Oh, are you doing drugs?" "Hell yeah, I love drugs," says Randy. "Great, come over to our place and we'll do some drugs together." Well, it turns out they're, of course, illicitly getting supplies of Ozempic and its similar drugs.
Right. Yeah. And of course he thought he meant meant Mary Jane.
Right,
The
since he's now a weed farmer.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So then he starts taking Ozempic, and they and his wife, God, I get Sharon. Uh, she starts noticing that he's lost his appetite, and then
Right. Like, do you think you're better than me now?
yeah. Yeah, and so then when so back with the A plot with Cartman, they find out that Kyle finds out that they can actually make their own Ozepic by getting all the ingredients from India.
Right. Thank you, TikTok.
Yeah.
And so they kind of go Breaking Bad. Um, and then it all kind of, I don't think we necessarily need to spell out the
Right, right.
whole special, but those are the elements that are in play. But let's just say that the sugar cartel decides that they want to stop them from feeding the underground Ozempic market,
Yeah.
and it all comes together in the end.
Yeah.
With Randy concluding, you know, if he started dressing in a crop top, what happened? He started hanging out with bad people who did drugs, just like he
Right.
told his daughter.
Yeah.
So I would say that from a humor perspective, this one had some good jokes, had some that didn't land quite so well.
Yeah.
But that's unfortunately for me, the part that didn't end well was a big elaborate chase scene at the end of the episode with a bunch of cereal mascots trying to stop them from getting a truckload of Ozempic materials into town.
Yeah. It effectively parodied the ending chase scene in Road Warrior.
Which is funny that we had just watched it the week before.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but like the whole, I think it's a problem of, I think you just hit it on the head, is that it is very much referential humor
Mhm.
combined with you better find it really funny that these serial mascots are talking like they're like Colombian gangsters or whatever, are and are out to take them down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think I already said my favorite joke, which was the whole setup with the bad people doing drugs if you wear a crop top thing.
Yeah.
Um, I would say that Cartman's dream of getting skinny to make fun of people was in character for him, but it didn't quite hit as hard as it
Yeah.
could have. So I would kind of give this one like a B for South Park humor if I'm grading on the curve.
Yeah.
They weren't speaking in Spanish. It's been a couple weeks since we watched it because I had that hiatus I forgot about. So I can't remember if they were speaking in like a vaguely Latin American accent or if it was more like they were trying to be Italians.
I think they were trying to be Italian, if I remember
Okay, so I
right.
just maybe I was thinking Colombian gangsters because of the white powder that they were trading in.
Yeah. Yeah, and they although I think they were kind of doing like accents with their their catchphrases and everything.
Right, right. The other thing I'll say is that um, can we just say that South Park is like the most preachy show, but it gets away with it because it's usually preaching common sense and relatable things.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
So that means that when they have a premise I don't quite relate to, it doesn't hit as hard. Like, I don't know where they're seeing these middle-aged women showing off their stomachs all the time, because I can't think of the last time I saw somebody walking around anything but
Yeah.
heavy clothes up here in Washington State.
Well, they are in California, so
That's true. So that's going to influence some of what they have.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Also, the biggest joke that just like, oh god, that sounds horrifying, was what apparently Cartman's regular food is,
Okay.
which shows the KFC cereal bomb,
Oh,
where he takes a whole bucket of KFC, pours in like 2 boxes of cereals, pours a whole bunch of milk on top of it, then mixes it all together.
yeah. Ugh.
Like, oh god,
Oh,
like, it feels like something he would do, but oh.
ugh. Yeah. Yeah. No. No. No.
They also got a good shot in at Lizzo for fat acceptance, because she's basically the fat acceptance person.
Yeah.
Because Sharon gets prescribed Lizzo as her alternative to Ozempic. It's
Yeah.
basically just not giving a crap if you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Why soak fried chicken? I can't help you, Ninja. I can't help you with that.
Yeah, especially like and he was eating with a spoon, so I don't think that works logistically, because you'd be unless he's just swallowing the bones. Is the milk there to to soften up the chicken
Something
bones? I don't think that would work.
I don't know. That wouldn't work unless they were all unless it was all boneless.
Yeah, but KFC doesn't give you a boneless in a bucket like that
No,
usually.
they
It's
no
usually
they
like the
don't.
box.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're overthinking this.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Either way, pretty good episode. I would say it was a bit better than the last one they did about the prime drinks.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, I watched it solo a few months back. Nothing has quite matched the mimetic potential of their Kathleen Kennedy parody.
Yes. Which is playing out now.
Yes, and we're not talking about that.
No, no, no. We're not going to talk about that.
Instead, Daniel, since you're the stream meister,
Hmm.
I decided to do some meme investigation. But first, we need to establish what the meme is.
Yes. Yes. Let me get that queued up for us here. All right. All right. Share screen. Okay. Share audio. There we go. All right. Let me do this real quick. Okay. All right. And all right. Make sure. Okay. All right. All right. We're good. We're good. All right. Okay.
So that's quite enough of that.
Yeah,
So this is
yes.
the current brain rot that's spreading around the Weebiverse.
Yes.
So I decided to review the manga of My Dear Friend Nokotan, which that is what that is from. That is a moment from I've watched a trailer and that moment didn't appear in it, so I wonder if it was from a different trailer.
Mm,
Uh, it's a gag manga that is getting an anime adaptation that's launching in July,
mm.
and the studio behind this was genius for recognizing just how well that whole sequence loops,
Yeah.
because it's weirdly fascinating. And I even saw the anime studio that made it post one of those hour-long clips of it.
Yeah.
So, My Dear Friend Nokotan is definitely a premise you have seen before.
Uh,
It's actually kind of reminiscent of the old anime Squid Girl. Uh, in this one, I don't know character names. You have a blonde girl who was the one dancing smugly at the deer in the video. She is like the number one student at her school, and she runs into this deer girl hybrid named Nokotan, hence the name.
yeah.
And she is bizarre, like even by the standards of gag manga characters like that. She is bizarre. Like when she first finds her antlers have gotten tangled up in telephone wire, and huge amounts of mucus are streaming from her nose for apparently no reason.
Uh,
Yeah, that kind of put me off. I've read 3 or 4 chapters of it just because I was curious. Okay, what is this thing actually about? And the answer is it's kind of what you'd expect. She has weird, inexplicable powers that just do whatever the what I will loosely call a plot demands.
mm,
Like the top end student turned out to be a former delinquent, and she's trying to keep that a secret. But the deer can sniff out secrets, so she knows all about it. Well, like deer do.
yes, of course.
And she has a whole bunch of those deer crackers, which if you've seen any anime where they have those semi-tame deer feeding areas, that's what they feed them there.
Okay. And you're just like, why does the doe girl have antlers?
Well, but first off, I think that there are some Asian species that both sexes do have antlers, though I'd have to double check that.
Oh, okay.
But also, otherwise, she would just be a girl, and you
Yeah.
wouldn't notice anything different about her.
Yeah.
So, do I recommend it? If you're in the mood for just some dumb fun, it's actually pretty decent.
Yeah.
Um, I knew this going into it, but I think I would have figured it out. The artist here actually did the art for one of the whole live VTubers, Kanata.
Okay.
Um, in fact, let's just get a picture of her here on the fly. Yeah, because there's a few shots in the show few shots in the manga where the art style is just identical
Uh,
to how she draws or draws that character. So
okay.
yeah. Now, is it worth the place it's storing my brain going, she can nuka 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 kosh tan tan. She can nuka 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 kosh tan tan. No, and they should be ashamed of themselves for that brilliant marketing.
Yeah.
But it's less brain rotting than Daniel's solo review.
Yeah. 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 So after watching the Disaster Artist movie, went ahead and listened to the audio uh, book version of it, which was written by Greg Sestero and Tom Bissell, and the book is narrated by Greg Sestero, who, of course, if you've seen The Room, he's Mark in The Room.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hi, Mark. Yeah, it's. I'll try not to go too in depth because I mean, with my review of the movie, but I guess I'll just like talk about the stuff that Greg mentions in the book that didn't get into the movie. Um, so like one of the things that was funny was that they had actually cast a different actor to play Mark.
Oh, that poor guy.
It kept calling him Don, but his name was Dan. And they would film a scene with Mark. They'd film the scenes with Greg playing Mark, and then they'd bring Don in to film his scenes, but they weren't really filming. They were just pretending that they were.
Right, they were just jerking this poor guy around.
Yeah, and finally, yeah, and Greg finally tells Tommy, Tommy Wiseau, like, you gotta cut this guy loose. You can't keep doing this to him.
Right, it's unfair.
Yeah, um, and of course, just like the chaotic shooting of it all, like it's hearing about like everything that went on, it's not really all that surprising that Tommy spent $6 million on this movie, given all the
No.
different crews that he kept having to hire and pay off, and then buying all the equipment that he didn't need to buy.
Right. You're supposed to rent the cameras, you idiot.
Yeah.
The nice people at the studio even tried to tell him, oh, no, you misunderstand, sir. You're supposed to rent these because they expire after a while.
Yeah. And but he couldn't spend any money for water for the actors.
No, no one provides water on these shoots.
No, no,
Actors
don't
bring
get
it
water.
themselves.
Yeah, yeah, and no air conditioning either.
Yes, like we're talking like 120 degrees because they had to build the they had to build the top of the building indoors.
Yes, and and well, and what got me too was well, and unfortunately the actress, I can't remember her name, but the one who plays Lisa's mother, she actually fainted
Yeah,
during the because it got so hot in there, and but when and, like the first scene they shoot, of course, was the Chris R scene with Denny, which if you've watched that movie doesn't go anywhere. The subplot just doesn't go anywhere. And
yep.
but they first filmed it in the alley, which makes sense that it would be in the alley. But then but then for some reason Tommy was like, "No, we need to do it on the roof." So they had to so they refilmed it on the roof, and they had to bring the actor who played Chris R back. and, and then they took out the alley set. They struck it, but then they had to build it again because Tommy wanted to shoot another scene, a scene that meant absolutely nothing in there.
And
Uh, but I think the story that I really liked the most was when they're filming it was right after the oh hi Mark the haha what a story Mark the when they were filming the scene, of course, like the story that Mark is telling about, he's telling a story about a girl that he knew that had like a dozen guys, and they all found out about it, and they beat her up so bad she ended up in a hospital. And Tommy, kept laughing, ha ha ha, what a story, Mark. And and so Greg decides, well, I'm going to try to get him to react differently. So he ad libs the line about, oh, she ended up in a hospital on Guerrero Street because that was where Tommy Wiseau lived in San Francisco, was on Guerrero Street. And Tommy Wiseau being I don't talk about my past. I don't talk about my life and none of that. He mentions he lived, mentions Guerrero Street, but it doesn't work. He still does the ha ha, what a story, Mark. And then afterwards, he's like, "What are you doing, Mark? You can't. Why are you talking about Guerrero Street? I can't believe you did that."
yeah, so I think having also I started with the audiobook, then watched the movie after. I think
Mhm.
you watched in the right order because
Okay.
seeing the movie shortly after listening to the audiobook, it's like, oh, but you skipped that scene and you skipped that story, and oh, I love that bit.
Yeah.
Or if you watch the movie first, this is now filling in the gaps in the movie instead of filling the gaps in the movie.
Right. Yeah. And they also the movie kind of condensed a lot of the events too. Like they in the movie they show Tommy and Greg going to L.A. together, but in reality, Greg went to L.A. before Tommy, and he was living
Mhm.
in Tommy's apartment. And and what I the other thing I didn't know was that Greg was in the prequel to Puppet Master. It was called Retro Puppet Master. Um, if you know anything about low budget horror movies, the Puppet Master franchise is a very popular one. It's uh, Full Moon Entertainment. Charlie Band's the producer. He's made like 12 of them. They're all like straight to
Wow.
video. Yeah. But yeah, I had no idea he was in that. But anyway, yeah, it's God, what else? There was something else in there.
I liked the bit where early on they they meet his mother, or they meet the author's mother as Tommy is going away with them,
Yeah.
and she basically says, "Please don't sleep with my son."
Yeah. Like that is it's like, what is with your mom? That is crazy. What is she saying that? or or the story when I think it was the first chapter when they're going to eat at the Palms, and which is a very exclusive restaurant in LA. And of course they don't have a reservation, and Tommy's like, "Oh, I have a reservation like for Ron." Don't have a Ron on there. Oh, I'm sorry, Robert. Like, no, no, Robert. Oh no, oh no. Okay, it's John. John. Party of four. Yeah, that's us.
And just managed to BS his way through it when he really shouldn't have.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, the book really one of the things I like too is that the book really goes into uh the enigma that is Tommy Wiseau, which if you know anything about the lore with the room, Tommy Wiseau is just like nobody knows anything about him. Like they don't know how old he is. They have a pretty good guess. I mean, I would say he's probably like 60s, maybe pushing 70.
Right. Oh,
Um,
you mean in the present day?
the present day, yeah, yeah. At the time that the room was made, he was probably like in his 40s or 50s. Um, and they know that they don't really know where he's from, although he tells everybody he's from New Orleans, but it's like, oh, come on. You got an Eastern European accent. um, but I think the him having that mystique actually helps with the popularity of the movie and the cult like feel of the movie, because it just adds to that, as
Right.
to the
You
draw of it. Yeah.
have no idea who this weirdo is, and so the only lens you have to see it is to go buy the DVD of the movie.
Right. Yeah. Um, and I think something tells me that we're not going to know anything about him until he dies, um, which is probably hopefully is later rather than sooner. But
Right, of course.
yeah, but yeah, if much like the movie, if you really liked if you like the room, and if you like the disaster artists, yeah, like DB said, the book will definitely fill in a lot of the gaps from the movie. So yeah, like DB was saying, what I would say, watch the movie first and then listen to the audiobook or read the book, because yeah, you'll definitely get uh, more in-depth look into the insanity of the movie, and of course everything leading up to the making of the movie. So
Yep.
mm,
And if you didn't enjoy it, we're sorry we wasted your time. We would
yes.
hate to be time bandits.
Yes.
So, Daniel, I think this was your suggestion. It was kind of on my mind because I kept hearing that they're remaking this thing,
uh,
but I realized I knew nothing about it aside from it being an 80s movie that was named Time Bandits.
yeah, and the only thing I knew about it was that it was a Terry Gilliam movie. Um, and I think it was one of the first his first movies, not or one of his first non Monty Python movies. Which, if you've seen any of his uh, non Monty Python movies, like 12 Monkeys, which is another time travel movie, um,
Brazil.
Brazil, trying to think of. But yeah, he has a very unique style, very kind of surrealist
Yeah,
uh, view form of storytelling. Yeah,
yeah. This was basically the kind of thought process that would go into his weird Gillimation stop motion things from the Monty Python's Flying Circus show
yeah,
in movie form.
right, yeah, yeah. So, and it is more, I will say, more family friendly than uh, some of his other movies. Um,
There's still a few bits where I would go older kids only, but
Yeah, yeah, because there's a little bit of the Monty Python humor in there, obviously, because it's Gilliam, and it was also co-written by with Michael Palin. Gilliam and Michael Palin wrote it. Um, but yeah, so it's about uh, so basically this kid, and I'm blanking on the kid's name.
yeah, I'm looking it up as we speak.
Yeah, because again, it's been a couple of weeks since we watched this movie, so it's
And the trouble is that as I go to IMDb, uh, clearly the kid has not gone on to great fame and fortune because oh, he was Kevin. Okay,
Kevin. Oh, right, right.
Yeah, they don't even have a picture for him, so I wonder if this was his only major role.
Probably, yeah. Um, so
Okay, okay, 2 roles in the 80s.
oh, okay. So yeah, so Kevin is he's a kid, what is he, about 11, 12, 10, 11, 12. In living in a little town in England. And he's really into history. And one night when he's asleep in his bedroom, a knight pops out from his closet. He just has absolutely no idea why. And then the next night, he's waiting in his bedroom, wondering if the same thing will happen. It's not a knight; it's a group of little people. Um,
Right. Each one dressed like they're from a different era. Like there's one who looks like a pirate, one who looks like a Civil War soldier, one who looks like a Mongol conqueror.
yeah, yeah. And one of the little people, little person actors, is Kenny Baker, who played R2D2. Um,
It was nice that they had so many roles for little people actors in the 80s when you really think about it. It was like a golden age.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, between like this movie, Willow, Return of the Jedi.
All
Uh,
the Ewok spin-off stuff.
yeah. Um, but yeah, so they find out, the kid find they basically abduct the kid, or
Yes,
and they abduct Kevin, and because they're running from was it the Supreme Being?
basically God.
Yeah, basically God.
I
Yeah,
don't think they ever actually say the word God, but they dance around it.
yeah, yeah. And because they stole a map, and the map is basically just like it shows like different like points in history and time where you could like go through and go to another part in time point in time. So they fall through this one part, and then they end up in Italy and during the Napoleonic Wars, and they meet Napoleon, who's played by Ian Holm, who was in, he was the android in Alien, and he was Bilbo Baggins in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And Kevin finds out that that the little people are basically they're thieves.
Right.
Their big plan is to go around all these points in time and steal stuff.
Right. They're also almost like fallen angels because they were there to help the supreme being create the world. And their joke was that they got to make plants. They made one plant, a 400-foot tall pink thing that smelled like garbage, I think was
Yeah,
the
yeah,
idea of it. And that idea was put on the kibosh and they were demoted. So
yeah,
they decided, screw it. We're just going to steal a bunch of treasure and go retire somewhere and be happy.
yeah. And I would say the first two acts of the movie are is basically kind of like Bill and Ted, where they're just going to all these points in history and meeting all these historical figures. They meet Robin Hood, who's played by John Cleese. Funny little bit in there. Yeah,
Yep. That was probably the most Monty Python of the whole movie, aside from maybe the bit where they ran into the ogre. That also felt very Monty Python.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, the Napoleon scene might have gone on a bit too long. Though
Mhm.
there's that phenomena where you know comedy rule of three, but then if you keep going and driving a joke into the ground, the fact that you're driving the joke into the ground eventually becomes funny again.
Yeah,
Th- That was the extended scene where Napoleon was sitting around his table with them, talk about all these great conquerors in history and how he was secretly taller than all of them.
yeah, yeah,
Alexander the Great, 2 inches shorter than me.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and then he just passes out drunk. Yeah.
So, yeah, as they go, they do steal some stuff. Meanwhile, the evil genius, played by
David Warner.
David Warner, who fans of Batman the Animated Series will recognize as the voice of Ra's al Ghul.
Yes, yeah. he had a very prolific character actor career. Yeah, he was in a lot of stuff.
Uh, and his goal is to get this map because it will let him retake the world. And the creator, all this life is pointless. I don't think that the supreme being has considered the ramifications of the silicon chip.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We got to use computers and yeah, and
Yeah. So he eventually manages to trick the heroes into coming in and delivering him the map.
yeah,
And I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about Kevin and his backstory because uh, one of the things I thought was interesting is that when they introduce it, it's very clear that it's not quite the present. Like it was made in the 80s, but they have technology on TV that would be clearly impossible. So
hmm
could have been, their version of 1995 or 2023 or, just any year you like in the
yeah,
future.
yeah,
Like they had technology that could cook a whole meal from, was it from pellets? I remember it was like very quickly meal turnaround.
yeah, yeah. It was something like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was like a nuke, like nuke your food kind of thing. Yeah,
And Kevin's parents were very checked out. Oh, the only thing the dad ever wanted to do with him was to make sure he was going to bed on time.
right. Yeah,
And there he is reading his book about the ancient Greeks and being so excited, and dad just does not care.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
Kevin later on gets to meet King Agamemnon, played by
Right,
Sean Connery,
right. Yeah,
and he gets adopted, and he's so happy until the time bandits show up and screw it all up for him.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And one of the things I kind of I liked was with Evil with David Warner, where there's like a partner where he says, "I actually feel good." Oh, I'm sorry, sir. It'll pass.
Yeah, there's a lot of very fun moments, and those him and his minions might have had the best parts of the movie.
Yeah,
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 definitely had that biggest climax at the end where they're trying to take the map back. Yeah, they kind of go all out for that one, and
yeah, yeah,
I'd love to know what the budget of this movie was because it was probably it might have been it was definitely more lavish than any of the Monty Python ones I can think of.
yeah. Let's
Especially
see.
Holy Grail, which was made for like what 10,000 quid on a weekend or something.
Yeah, yeah, something. Yeah, very very small amount of money. Let's see. It had a $12 million budget.
Okay, yeah, I'd believe that.
Yeah.
Um, I I feel like this movie should not be remade, and I think I'm going to avoid talking about the ending specifically because I think it is worth a watch.
Mm,
Definitely not for people who don't have a bent towards the surreal,
yeah, yeah.
or for people who I would say this movie's version of Napoleon is probably about as historically accurate as the version of Napoleon from the movie Napoleon from last year.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. I don't know if I liked it as much as you did. I mean, I like I said, I thought the first two acts were really good because it kind of had that, like I said, had that kind of like Bill and Ted feel to it. Um, but for me, like as soon as they get to where the bad guys are, it kind of like I was kind of losing a little interest in it because it just seemed to be a little. I don't know. I kind of have a hard time explaining it. It kind of
It definitely is a little bit longer than its premise, maybe.
yeah, yeah.
And
It,
and while like the last fight scene is kind of cool, it the ending is
weird.
yeah.
Yeah,
You could call it a Deus Ex Machina, except they
yeah,
did kind of establish it in advance. So
yeah,
either way, like I wouldn't say it's my favorite movie, but it is interesting
yeah.
and it's definitely creative. Which and
Yeah,
I can't say I've ever seen a movie quite like it.
yeah, same here. Yeah, it's yeah, and I guess that just Terry Gilliam is just a very off the wall filmmaker, and this is definitely in his part of who he is, um, and Ninja says, yeah, it is very much more of a comedy, as yeah,
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 right. It is a comedy. Although it's a comedy that has some dark moments too. So
yeah,
it's like a whimsical adventure with a hard edge, I guess I would put it.
yeah, yeah. That sounds about right. Yeah, and part of me wonders if this wasn't kind of like a test run for Gilliam with 12 Monkeys, because since they're both about time travel.
Yeah, I've never seen 12 Monkeys. Maybe we should get to that one of these days.
Yeah, I saw it. I think I watched it like 20 years ago in college. I remember it being probably the best, probably the most accurate use of time travel. One of the one of the more accurate uses of time travel, I think.
Uh, As in, like, actually accurate to physics, or more just internally consistent?
More internally consistent. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the hard part.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, this movie's on Max, so yeah, if you're
Oh,
so inclined, yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely worth even though I didn't like it as much as DB. I mean, I still think it's worth a watch.
yep. Speaking of things that are worth a watch, and something that is slightly less original,
Yes.
Belle.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's funny what Bing image search brings me when I go to look for these movie posters. I don't think we've had one from Germany before like this.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah. But yeah, so this is a anime movie. Came out about what, 2016, I think. Was it?
2021, released in the States in 2022.
Oh, 20. Okay, okay, so it's newer than I thought. Um, yeah, basically fits into what we were talking a couple of days, or we were talking uh, as we were watching the movie, that kind of fits into this like subgenre of anime of uh, what was it, depressed teenage girl.
Depressed teenage girl comes across supernatural thing.
Right.
Uh, this is like you're weathering into you. Although technically the guy was the point of view character in that one, but the girl was still the unusual depressed one.
Yes, and
Um,
yeah,
Suzume, Your
your name.
Name,
Yeah,
The Girl Who Leapt Through Time.
yeah. Um, yeah, so the movie follows Suzu, and she's Japanese teenage girl living in a little town. Uh, she's got the tragic backstory with her mom dying. Uh, her mom died rescuing a little girl who was trapped in a flooding river. Um,
Right.
and
Little girl got back, mom didn't.
yeah, and she has a basically non-existent relationship with her father. And all the while, there's this virtual reality world where everybody goes to, called U, just the letter U. Um, and the way it works is that when you set up your account with it, it like uses a picture of you, and then it creates an avatar from the way you look. If I'm if
I think it also has like something where it can measure your vitals to figure out your best representation.
yeah. Yeah, and so when Suzu does it, it turns into the avatar on the right, and of course she thinks it's a mistake because she uses a class photo with another girl that's in the photo who's really pretty, and she thought it was that uh, the AI didn't do it right, but then she looked at the avatar and it had freckles, and she has freckles.
Right. And before we get into what she does in there, one of the key thing is that her thing with her mom was music. You know,
Mhm.
they were always she was learning to play the piano on this phone app. They had a keyboard. She was writing music all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, and after her mom died, it's the point where she was like, it's interesting because she's in choir, but she just hides under the table. Just so much anxiety.
Mhm.
She's by herself at one point and tries to sing and vomits out of stress.
Yeah.
So they definitely do a good job of making you feel for this poor character.
Yeah. And then yeah, then of course as soon as she gets into you, that's she starts singing, and then she has this beautiful singing voice, uh, and of course a lot of people think, oh, she's just showing off, but then reality, like, no, a lot of people actually really like her, even though they like her better than this other girl who's a singer in you.
Right?
Um,
She basically completely shoves aside the old hotness.
right. And she starts going by Belle. At first with no E, but then she later adds the E, I think.
Right? Because her name literally means bell in Japanese, is in ringing a bell.
Mhm.
So that's the reference to her name. But everyone adds the E because oh, she's beautiful, so it must mean French for beauty.
Yes. And so Belle, when Suzu as Belle, she's doing a concert, and then this guy shows up, and they call him the Beast, and he looks, and if you're thinking, oh, is this Beauty and the Beast?
It absolutely is.
Yes.
One second, let's get an image of this guy.
Yeah. And yeah, one of the things they notice is that he has bruises on his back.
Right, which is weird because it's like, well, why is the biometric thing giving him bruises on his back?
Yeah.
Uh, And yeah, so he isn't exactly a copy of the Beast, but like definitely reminiscent of it. It's like the Beast combined with an Eastern dragon.
Yeah. And so the basically the whole time Belle's trying to find out who the Beast is. She gets clues, and then she eventually finds where his little hideout is, and it just so happens to be in a castle. And the Beast has all of these uh, AI companions, and then the entire time I'm thinking, why didn't Disney sue them?
Yeah, like they were literally doing. I was like, okay, this seems somewhat similar. And then they have a scene where they're dancing together, and they do the same camera pan in the nearly identical ballroom
Yeah,
as the dancing scene from Beauty and the Beast.
yeah, yeah. It's like, oh wow. uh,
And so you kind of you have a few things going on here. Belle, or excuse me, Belle, Suzu trying to come out of her shell. She only feels like herself in you.
yeah,
Trying to figure out who the Beast is, and uh, and just some other school shenanigans.
right. Yeah, and yeah, there's and of course there's a boy at her school he's the childhood friend, and he's
Right?
really popular. Yeah, and yeah.
It's like, okay, so he's the obvious candidate.
Hmm.
Although that would be a really stupid coincidence that two of the best known people in you went to the same school together, but so many anime are built on stupid coincidence that it wouldn't be too surprising.
Yeah, that's true.
But let's so that's the basic premise. Let's
Mhm.
spend a minute here to talk about some of the production.
Yeah.
So interesting thing. You notice how Belle there looks a lot like a Disney princess? That's because they literally hired one of the Korean animators who had worked on movies like Moana to come in and design the avatar. Uh, so the real world is done in 2D anime style. This was actually directed by, and I left the page, so one moment.
Oh,
Uh,
wasn't it the same guy that did The Girl Who Left Through Time?
yep, Girl Who Lived Through Time, and also very in keeping with the themes of this movie, exploring parallel worlds or parallel digital worlds. He also did the good part of the Digimon movie, slash uh, Sakura Wars, which was basically him getting to do his own version of that years later.
Yeah.
Um, which I immediately said to myself as I'm watching this movie, the way these characters like the you can it's funny how just little things like the line like the characters here have very thin lines
Hmm.
when they're in 2D, and like there's just a particular way that he draws mouths that I immediately recognized and said, wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my suspicion was correct. Director's name is Mamoru Hosoda. He
Hosted.
also wrote this movie. He's basically one of those auteur types who gets to make whatever he wants.
Okay.
Um,
Oh,
see,
his name's actually on the poster.
yes. Well, I did the hard way and looked it up on
Yeah.
IMDb. Huh.
Yeah.
He also apparently directed one of the earlier One Piece movies from 2005, and he was
Mhm.
on Samurai Champloo, which, now that I think about it, that kind of makes sense. So, hmm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Guy's got a storied career.
Yeah.
I think he's at the point of his career where he gets to make whatever the heck he wants. And in this case, he wanted to make his own little loving tribute to Beauty and the Beast, which is why I have all the visual references.
Yes. Yeah. And and Ninjas asks, please, that is the normal form is the guy from Beastly. What's Beastly? Is that
Beastly. I don't know what that is.
uh,
Sorry.
yeah, I don't know either. But yeah, it's a very yeah. It had. I think an issue that you had was by the way, I do like the contrasting animation styles between the two worlds because I'm not the biggest fan of CGI anime, but I think it works well here because it's a virtual reality world, so it's meant to kind of have that uncanny valley look to it.
All right, if I was going to compare the CGI anime to other recent movies that have done that, this isn't as good as Dragon Ball Super Superhero, where the whole thing was in CGI and it wasn't too noticeable aside from anime profiles still look kind of weird when they're done in full 3D.
Oh, okay.
Um, but I would say that in this one, it works pretty well. And especially, yeah, like you said, you have the extra layer of abstraction that it's supposed to be a virtual world with avatars, so things should look slightly uncanny.
Yeah. Oh, Ninja says it's an old movie. It's Beauty and the Beast, but it's like Twilight. Okay.
Ah,
Yeah.
but so yeah, from an animation perspective, everything works very well.
Yeah.
Uh, the other thing is that, dang, the music in this movie is pretty.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
This is a full-on musical.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. It is. Yeah. 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 Especially all the songs that Suzu sings as Belle. Yeah. Like.
Yeah, it kind of fails the hum test where I can't hum or whistle them later, but dang, I just uh, so on behind the voice actors, she is listed as Kylie McNeil, who has no other roles listed. That's got to be a pseudonym.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But whoever she is, not only did she do a wonderful job with all of the songs, which is just like very resonant, a very emotional voice. She also did a good job of portraying Suzu as, she just came off as awkward and sad.
Hmm. Yeah. Although I think although to a negative, I think that you were pointing out was just the how the virtual reality world really didn't make sense.
No, let's thank you for bringing that up because we're done with the positives of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the okay, so I also saw this in the Sword Art Online Gun Gale arc where some anime seem to want to do this idea where, oh, of course, people would go into this alternate world where you can't design your own avatar.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if you get to be a Disney princess, that's a good match for Suzu there. But like, the Beast didn't get to decide his avatar. Uh,
Yeah.
an older woman that they meet who lies about herself online is a baby, in the alternate universe.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of people who, in one scene, I noticed that there were three things that looked like a hand with a face drawn on it, and it's like, okay, first off, uh, I would just quit right there if I got into this VR world and that was my avatar assigned by the game that I couldn't do. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's unique. People just know me as the hand with the face, and there were two others that looked almost identical to them in that scene. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
come on. So they definitely just did a lot of weird for the sake of weird with the avatars.
Yeah.
But of course, I was starting to think like, okay, so it seemed like they were able to dive in on their phones. Is that right? Or did they just have the messenger function on their phones?
Well, yeah, they had the phones, and they had like earbuds that they put in.
Right. Like Time Bandits had impossible technologies from the not too distant future. Earbuds that just let you full dive into a VR world seem a little bit 23rd century to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing too, there's another character we forgot to mention was Suzu's friend, who's like
Oh,
kind of
Hiroka,
yeah, yeah, she's like her kind of like her quasi manager.
right? Because Belle gets a nice little singing career in this other world.
Yeah. Um and she has this like whole setup of all these monitors everywhere, um and she was a fun character because she was kind of like, you could tell she was like the friend that's like trying to get the other friend to like, hey, come on, get
Right.
snap out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Stop being depressed about your mom. Boo hoo hoo. We all have problems, crybaby.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, she's always there, like with the funny things. Like she pretends to be an adult interviewing people for a magazine when she's trying to figure things out about the beast.
Yeah.
Um, and it works out perfectly. And just a bunch of other little fun things.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, me being the guy who knows that most websites and apps are unsustainable. Things like, Uber's never really made a profit.
Mm.
DoorDash is a money pit, et cetera, et cetera. I'm thinking to myself, okay, so it's hard enough to make money for AAA games like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League.
Yeah.
Imagine, they also say early on that the app has 5 billion users and growing. Now, this more or less appears to be taking place in the modern day, aside from the full dive earbuds.
Yeah.
And my mind goes to, are there 5 billion in the world, or people in the world who have access to smartphones?
No.
I It might be close to that. I don't know how many people don't have electricity,
Yeah.
but
Well, yeah, 5 billion. I mean, that's more than half the population of the planet.
yeah. So like, I think at the very least, if you had 5 billion users, you would be at capacity or very close to it.
Yeah.
And then I think to myself, okay, on top of that, you're having to simulate a persistent 3D world that people can just fly through. And it seems like they can just spontaneously generate things like music, enormous whales with speakers built into them.
Yeah.
Like that's got to be a heck of a tax on the servers.
Oh yeah. 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 Ninja says it's everyone in the developed world. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But
Yeah, right. It's exactly like you might be getting some penetration into parts of Africa or whatnot, but y- you're not getting many more people.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, and yeah, I can imagine what how many servers that would take to run
Right.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
realistically, she should be hitting load screens all the time whenever
Yeah.
somebody's in an area.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to be fair here and just say that these are thoughts that occur to me because I know too much about the subject. It's like a physicist watching Star Wars and getting upset.
Yeah.
Because it's a very pretty world. It's just like you can't think too hard about some of the aspects of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, we kind of are getting to the zone of spoilers, and
Yeah.
I think this movie is good enough to give a watch. It's also on Max,
Yeah.
although what I will say is I considered switching from the English to the Japanese cast just to see what it was like, and they did the stupid old thing where the two versions of the movies aren't like, you can't switch language tracks. They're
Okay.
actually on the service as
Two
different
separate.
movies.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
So, which one did you watch it in?
I watched the English. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So, can't comment on the Japanese. English dub was mostly good. Suzu's voice actress slash singer Kylie McNeil being a high point.
Yeah.
There were some people in the supporting cast who weren't quite as good. Like, I thought that the guy who was the kayaker, his voice was too high for how big and buff he was, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But overall, I would say that this is kind of one where you have to turn your brain off a bit for reasons we're going to get into in the spoiler section.
Yes. Yeah.
Just appreciate it as a pretty experience, and you will love it. And I think there's a lot to like, even if you start nitpicking it like we have been.
Yeah.
Because like, okay, Ben, is it their fault if they didn't work out the math for their super advanced thing? Well, no, because now should they have maybe said some lower numbers? I think that now if they'd said 1 billion, that would
Yeah.
have been much easier for me to swallow.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
If they had, I don't know if they ever said a year this took place, but everything else seems to be normal, like everyday modern Japan, except for this full dive earbud experience.
Yeah.
So it's if they had said 2040, I'd be like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll accept that.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, not too distant future, or like, sort of like the Marvel movies where it's supposed to be modern day, but there's like advanced stuff that doesn't fit in the
Right.
real world.
But just from a basics perspective, worthwhile movie. I think it's time to get into spoilers.
Yes.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
Daniel, does this movie seem a little bit too clean in its ending?
Yes.
Yeah. So the mystery of who the beast is, it is not the childhood friend that you think it is, or at
No.
least that I should say. My trope sense was tingling with him. My trope sense was wrong.
Yeah.
It turned out that the beast is a different character who we didn't actually meet, but we got like a little glimpse of him in an online snippet where he was talking about how the beast was his hero,
Yeah.
and that was his younger brother,
Hmm.
the beast's younger brother, I should say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very very sad tragic story. Yeah, the Beast is I'd say probably about maybe a year or two younger than Suzu.
Hmm.
He's You find out that his mom died. They don't really say how the mom died, but we could probably guess. Um, the
Oh, I hadn't even thought about it being the dad's fault, but
Yeah,
I can't discount that.
yeah, because the dad is horribly abusive to the 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 kid who's the Beast, and his younger brother.
Right.
Uh, yeah,
And the beast's whole thing is that he tries to protect the brother, and that's why in you he is this bruised being who is a hideous monster.
right. Yeah, and so they at the end of the movie they basically do Suzu and her friends, everybody, they find out who he is, and they want to help him, but he's like, oh, I've heard that before, you're not gonna
Right.
do anything.
Right. He refuses to say where he is.
Yeah, and they finally are about to get it out of him, but then the dad shows up and stops him and turns the stream off.
Right. And I don't know how that website actually worked. I don't know if it was like a chat roulette type thing. There, it's kind of convenient how they're able to find the little brother in a live stream,
Yeah.
and then they're able to. like the only app I can think of that I've used like that is StreamYard, like where you could be streaming and I could try to get in on the call.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't be viewing it through StreamYard. You'd be viewing it through YouTube or Twitch or whatnot,
Right.
which
Yeah.
does not have two-way conversations.
Yeah.
At least not the way it was being portrayed there.
Yeah. It was, yeah, very odd. Yeah.
And that was another one of those where this I get that it's a convenience for the story, but like it didn't feel real.
Yeah. Yeah. And how they figure out where the kid is kind of iffy, because what they did was they kind of do the whole, you know, Blade Runner enhance image, and they
Right.
looked out the window and they saw a building.
You know what's so that's actually a little bit of realism. Do you remember the whole thing with Shia LaBeouf and "He Will Not Divide Us,"
Yeah. Oh yeah.
where he
Oh
had
yeah.
his slide that said "We will not divide us,"
Yeah.
and the people in 4chan, no matter where he put it, their combined weaponized autism allowed them to figure out where he was in the world. Like they were like, because
Yeah.
it was like live streaming was live streaming a flag in a field. Well, they were able to look at star charts and figure out, oh, an airplane flew over. What planes are flying in that general area that we've narrowed it down to?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
What's the
remember
length of the
that.
shadows at this time of day? And they kept finding it. They even found it when he put the flag in a, I think it was inside of a log cabin in a museum in Sweden, and they
Yeah.
were able
Oh
to
yeah.
figure it out from
Yeah.
context.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that. Yeah. Okay.
So,
All right.
so
Yeah.
it's one of those things that seems iffy, and the whole enhanced image thing is a little bit weird,
Yeah.
but just like that actually is it's one of those things that seems like it like fake, but it could actually happen that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That was a little bit fast the way they did it, but
But yeah. Yeah. But yeah. So they figure out where he is, and then Zuzu gets on a train by herself. Why?
yeah, okay. So my attention had wandered for a moment there, and I was hoping that you would know why she went by herself, but she had four friends her own age there, plus a
Yeah.
group of adult women who she was in the choir with.
Yeah. And yeah. No. No. It never got explained why she went by herself. At least take your guy friends with you.
Right, take the guy with the kayak paddle. That can be a weapon.
Yeah.
And so she ends up finding the two guys, and she just stands up to the dad and the fact that he claws her a scratch on her face,
Yeah.
and he backs down because she's standing up to him.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, and I think the dialogue even says something along these lines, everything's good. She has gotten over her issues in one cathartic moment.
Yeah.
She can talk normally to her friends again, and her childhood friend who has just been treating her like a burden to protect, like, oh, I missed you so much. It's great to have you back.
Yeah. Yeah. And she repairs her relationship with her dad, and
Like that.
yeah. 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 It all gets wrapped up in a nice, neat little bow.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily mind that it was wrapped up in a nice, neat little bow. They just didn't quite earn the nice, neat little bow,
Mm, yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah. It felt it felt rushed to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, maybe this is a George Lucas problem where no one could tell Mamoru no,
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah.
or like make serious suggestions, or it could be that this is more meant as. Here's the thing: if it wasn't childhood abuse or something like that, I think I'd be more forgiving of the ending being kind of easy.
Yeah.
Or if they hadn't done such a good job of showing the pit that Susie was climbing her way out of, because we kind of brushed over this, but
Oh yeah.
as she was gaining confidence being Belle in this alternate universe, she was able to do things like join the community choir and sing again
Yeah.
and start opening up to other people.
Yeah. And the community choir that she's in, her mom was in that group. You find out at the yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, so uh, but it's like she went from, I don't know, jogging to running a marathon in terms of emotional development.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also kept thinking, man, So this guy is willing to punch his own kids, but a little girl who gets in his way, no, that's too far. That's
Yeah, yeah,
like I kept thinking, man, if he is like at least twice her weight
yeah,
and like a foot taller than her. If he didn't back down because she stood up to him, she would be kind of boned.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that part of it really didn't make much sense to me. I guess it was just they're just showing that, like, well, in his heart, in deep down in his heart, he's a coward, and
Right. That's why he takes that on his kids.
yeah,
So yeah, and it's kind of from the movies I've seen from this guy, I feel like they all kind of are similarly like they're always beautiful,
mhm,
always have a really neat premise. I don't. I've. It's been 10 years since I watched The Girl Who Left Through Time, but I remember that one feeling like it had a slightly unsatisfying ending too.
mm.
I'd have to go back and rewatch to remind myself why I came away with that opinion.
Yeah. I haven't watched it yet. I think that's on Crunchyroll. It might be in my list.
Probably.
Yeah,
But yeah, so what I would say here is that this is a movie that doesn't reward thinking, and I don't know how well it would reward a second viewing,
yeah,
maybe in a few years. But
yeah,
like I'll say, the movie wasn't like antagonistic towards the audience. It didn't make you feel stupid for caring about things.
right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
It's just that it didn't quite stick the landing.
yeah, 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 uh,
I guess that's kind of actually that's kind of the through line for the things we watched together,
yeah,
is that it's like, Time Bandits was, like you didn't like the third act of Time Bandits as much as I did, and
yeah,
I kind of felt like the South Park episode had kind of the ending was kind of weak because it relied too much on the reference, and
yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't realize. Yeah, hadn't realized. Yeah, all three of our reviews would would have the same same thing going with it. Yeah,
we keep coming into things with our unintentional similarities, but
yeah, yeah,
yeah. So I feel weird saying this because I usually make a point of saying, "Oh, it can't just look pretty and sound pretty." It gets a it gets a little bit of a buy for being a musical. Just dang, if you weren't going to actually address these deeper issues, you should have gone with a simpler mystery.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But I can also see why this was the number 3 movie in Japan that year, and
yeah.
it got a 14-minute standing ovation at the Cannes Film Festival
Wow. Hmm.
because it is a technical and musical accomplishment.
Yes, it is. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, I think we've said all we need to say about these.
Yep,
Yeah. Um,
it's a
yeah.
mixed week.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it as always.
Indeed.
Yeah, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit the bell, all that good stuff, and we'll see you next week. Bye,
Yep.
everybody.
Not everyone.